Go. Welcome to Tea Party Media Podcast. I am Martin Lindeskog. Hi, Mitch.
Hi, Martin.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's
What?
Friday.
Yeah. What are you thinking about?
Well, podcasting and all the work I'm going to do this weekend because I'm an
Yeah.
open source developer, so I do a lot of work on weekends.
Yeah.
But it's fun for me.
Yeah.
So
That's great. And now we are being live here also. So I will at the same time here check if it's hooked up on my Facebook and on YouTube. We'll see if it's working on LinkedIn also. Yeah. Look.
cool, brilliant.
So two, and we will see here. But when it's hard with multitasking, so I will concentrate on you as a guest. Uh, and here it's on Facebook,
Cool.
and we will see if it will come to YouTube also. It's all about this, settings and the parameters, and
hmm
uh, there I am. Okay, it's there. It's saying live. Yeah, so I had. So there it's on. Oops.
Time
There
warp.
was there were the so-called stereo or
Yeah,
roundabout. So
it's
Mitch,
cool you do that demo because hopefully Podverse will be in that rotation someday with
wow,
live streams.
yeah, and we could start with that. We recommend stopping the recording before hanging up the call. So that's one note to you because this
Okay.
is streaming and recording at the same time. But depending on, and I will check that we are using a service called Boomcaster. I
hmm
check now on Mitch. You have, yeah, good saying here on let's see how many percent, 80% upload, and I have that also. So
Okay.
it's then saying it's a good level because
Okay. Great.
all this technical thing, that's the you don't really want to mess with it, but you you want to see, and when you see this bar also
hmm
going on, so that's as an independent developer and program. Why did you start an app? And of course, you have to give a plug what app is calling. And to joke now, I'm doing a shout out to Adam Curry and Dave Jones. We are competing with you now live because I know that you have a board meeting of Podcasting 2.0 podcast. So there you have something in your app that you could do
Yeah.
with
Yeah,
live.
usually I'd be listening to them right now, but
Yeah.
instead I'm talking to you.
But you picked the time also, and I did that also. It's the time difference. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, this time happens to work best for me. And yeah, what is a 7-hour time difference or
yeah.
something like that? Uh yeah, so Podverse is a free and open source podcasting app for
Mm,
iOS, Android, F-Droid, and web.
mm,
We try to add as many features as we possibly can and make it work across devices
yeah.
so you can have a synchronized experience. So basically, one app that can work across all of your devices. And I got into it, boy, a long time ago. It when I started to learn how to code, it was like my main project. I loved podcasts. I'd listen to them for a few years, and I love that it's independent media. It's accessible to everybody. You can do it with very little money. I mean, there's some investment, but relative to the fact you can reach potentially anyone in the world with an internet access, um, it's amazing to me. And so I listened to a lot of podcasts at the time and had a hard time sharing it with other people. So I'd listen to like a few that I liked a lot and I'd want to share moments with people. And everyone else, they're watching Netflix or HBO. They don't know what I'm talking about. They're not familiar with it. So the origin of Podverse was just to make a clip sharing app to make it easy to share highlights. And on top of that, I've always been very passionate about open source software. So that was just kind of a given that I wanted to to make it open source. And yeah, so what started as a simple clip maker has now turned into a app with a ton of features, trying to do everything we can. And that's by design because I didn't want a separate app that I have to go into to make clips. I wanted one app that can do everything I need and also share clips because otherwise it's just not natural for me to be switching between multiple apps. It's just a little extra overhead.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, that's how it all started, and that was like 9 years ago. And I didn't know how to code at that time. I've had to teach myself as I go, and that's partly why it has taken so long, I think, to get it in a more mature state like it is now, where I think a pretty high quality user experience.
Yeah, I must say that it is. And I'm not a coder. I know HTML back in the day, but what kind of program language are you in order to do an app?
I do mostly JavaScript.
Yeah.
So JavaScript is the language that all websites use basically.
Mm.
It's what browsers natively support. And the interesting thing about JavaScript is that it's so widely adopted that you can write any type of technology with it potentially. I'm not saying it's right for every technology, but you can do websites, you can do mobile apps, you can do data APIs. So in the Podverse, it's all full stack JavaScript. We have like 5 different major code services, and all 5 of them are like 99% JavaScript.
Mm. And funny about that, that's my so-called humor. Java is you know, a slang for a cup of Java, and it's coming
Sure.
from Indonesia. That's very famous for their coffee
Hmm.
uh, plantations, but also tea. So in the history, they had some hard time with harvest, so they changed from tea to coffee and vice versa. So
Oh.
I will drink say cheers to that with my tea.
Well, you would be the expert on tea,
Yeah.
coffee
So
too, maybe.
yeah, I'm an amateur, and I've written a book about black tea, my first in the series. So, and also the name there, Tea Party Media. I'm a tea enthusiast. So we could take that as some quick questions. Then, what's your relation to tea?
Well, I love hot beverages like coffee and tea. I have coffee on the table right now.
Yeah,
Tea is more of an evening drink for me with
yeah,
less caffeine involved. Yeah, I love it.
yeah.
I don't know if I'm a connoisseur. I'll take pretty much whatever I have available.
Okay, and you are based in, if I may ask, where
Sure.
you could say in it's Central Time, right?
I'm in Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So in the
Illinois.
Windy City, that's
That's right.
expression.
Yes.
Uh, it's
And it's
both climate, but it's also political things. The Windy City. But
yes.
I visit Chicago twice in the summer, and it was beautiful. But there it's that I know called Being Tea. Suzette, she is a tea sommelier and also with meditations on. She has tea courses or tea trainings, and very good. I was starting subscribe to her tea, and I got a notification from the postal office with the customs that I have to pay a certain amount in order to, import and handling
Mm,
fee.
mhm,
But it's handpicked tea. So if you want to have really good tea, then you should check out Being Tea and the sources. But I know Chicago probably have some good stores and places you could buy like online, but also physical store. So
mhm.
but I know it's famous also for the coffee tradition and drinking beverage. And it's good when you're coding, right? You need to have that kick, right?
It helps. It definitely helps. I mean, there's not pretty much any work it can help with as long as you don't overdo it and get
Yeah,
jittery.
yeah,
Uh, but yeah, I try to keep the caffeine low because I don't like being too dependent on it. I like the taste so much.
yeah.
It's like a habit for me to drink. I don't necessarily need all the caffeine.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I like the caffeine or tea as it is in tea, and I don't get jittery of it. So maybe it's a mental
mhm,
thing or physical, but then I could suggest an alternative to coffee and tea. It's called yerba mate,
mhm,
and it's very popular in South America. And there you get get the kick, but not like energy drinks and so on. It's getting the
Mhm.
slump also dump. But and there is fellow podcast called Evo Terra, and he's
Sure.
very much into fiction podcasting and so on. And
Mhm.
he drinks yerba mate very much, and so that's something maybe to check out. So now when you have done these great launches and versions, and with your as a co-founder and programmers and your fellow team, what do you how do you celebrate? What's your party drink? So that's tea, party,
My
media.
party drink.
Yeah,
Uh, I'm more of a beer drinker.
yeah.
I don't that not nothing too exciting like
Do you have
uh,
microbrewers in Chicago that you like?
yes, there's just hundreds or if not
Yeah,
thousands of them. So yeah, I like pale ales.
yeah.
Typically, I like a hoppy
Mm.
quality beer, uh, or IPAs. There's very few I don't like. I
Yeah,
think the darker beers that
like the stout and
yeah, I don't like the stouts so much or the
yeah, you
oatmeal-y
get like
ones.
beer and bread at the same time. It's like almost like a meal, so it's very thick.
Yeah.
And then of course the Belgium they have all kind of even sweet beers and so on, like
Mm.
cherry and flavors and other things like. So it's beer, but that's interesting. Maybe people are wondering where Martin going now, but the beer market in America with microbrewers is a huge industry combined.
Yeah.
And here in Sweden, you had lots of small brewers first. Then the big players bought them up, like Carlsberg,
Mhm.
probably the best beer in the world, so called, is their slogan. It's a safe bet, so to speak. And Heineken and this kind of thing. Maybe Heineken is that slogan. But anyway, so then it was concentrated with a few players, but now it has been a renaissance again for the microbrewers. But then you have all these regulations and how you sell it, and because here it's a monopoly, you can't go
Mhm.
to like a drive-through liquor store. You have to go to a state-owned store in order to buy
Hmm.
beer and liquor in Sweden. So, but there now we have lots of to pick and choose from, and I see that a little bit of podcasting also on apps. First, it was many or not, and you have to program it yourself. Then
Mhm.
it became some big players, and now I see lots of things for different use cases and so on. So so
Sure.
s- so I really like seeing that coming in the future. So that's good to know that you're drinking beer when you're celebrating, and you should, because the app is, I mean, fantastic, and it,
Thank you.
it have lots of, and we'll go through it a little bit here, different features and what you could use with it and so on. But when we could take the thing directly, because I know that you are, for the freedom of expression, and how to the so-called the little guy, or and this kind of approach. So what's your media when we have teaparty.media? What's your favorite media outlet or social media platform?
Boy, I listen to so many different podcasts. There isn't a particular outlet. It's independent media that I
Yeah,
typically like. I like uh, ad free or like minimal ads.
yeah,
Let's see. Yeah, I don't know because there isn't like a specific network
no,
that I listen to. As for social media these days,
yeah,
it seems like polar people are polarized and have all kinds of different ideas about it. But I like Mastodon a lot.
yeah,
I like that it's open source, it's decentralized.
yeah,
I like it gives you an option to self-host,
mm,
so you can start your own instance and moderate it, manage it however you want, invite people to it however you want. I tend to like things that are outside of the big tech, just the big tech dominance,
yeah,
where you have the ability to do everything you want yourself independently. So other than that, I try to stay off of social media. I'm on Twitter. Twitter's kind of a bad habit for me.
Mm,
I'm on it less and less, but still scroll through it. But most of the other social media sites these days, I don't really use. Probably there's opportunities there that I'm missing in terms of marketing for
mm.
our business. It's hard for me to figure out marketing. I'm like so wrapped up in programming. It's hard. I don't know where to begin sometimes with marketing.
And we will talk about when you could get like merchandise, like
Yeah.
Boost.
Yeah.
That's from for your. You could call them a competitor, but also like friendly competition. Fountain.fm.
Sure. Fountain is supporting podcasting 2.0 features,
Yeah.
which if so podcasting 2.0 being uh, adding new features to podcasting.
Mm,
And that is done by adding new information to RSS feeds because every podcast has an RSS feed. That is how you share your podcast with the world as you put your information in an RSS feed, and then every app has access to it potentially if they want access to it. Uh, so yeah, Fountain does value for value specifically.
mm.
Probably some other 2.0 features too, but most well known for their Bitcoin Lightning value for value feature, which we also offer
Yeah.
in Podverse.
So that's what I'm seeing when I'm start playing around with new apps. You could have an app for everything. And as a new media advisor, I also say that you have to go and find your own hub or create your own hub, and then you could have satellites with social media. But I also see what we're doing with the algorithms others. So I hear you about that. And we talked in the green room about Mastodon and the Fediverse. I like the idea, but it's also it's it could take some time before you're getting used to it. Like the
Hmm.
UX, for example, you wonder why is it looking like this, right? It's similar to when I went to Discord first time. I didn't get that either. But now
Hmm.
I get a feel for it and like it, and especially this podcast index.social.
Hmm.
And I mentioned that for using this Boomcaster. I mentioned that for Harry to ask for an invite or send an email because he really, I think, could fit to understand what's going on. So he was very interested when he heard about the lit and live, because now we are live. So how could you combine it? But then, of course,
Right.
it is it any market for it? How much will it take to program? With somebody, use it, pay for it? How could you get supported? And now I'm going back and forth, but on Fountain, I'm paying a premium in order to use the service. And
Hmm.
then if you do a boostergram, like sending I call it a digital telegram with a note, and then you could send a note of, appreciation or token of appreciation with a small amount in so-called fiat currency. But you
Sure.
could then play around with symbolic numbers like 1776, like the founding of America, and
Hmm.
that's like not even a dollar. And so it's like it's interesting. And but then you want to support the developer and the system, so
Hmm.
it will continue. So could you tell a little bit about that? Because I saw when I done boost or streaming at Podverse, it's saying like a default of, is it 50 sats or something like that?
Yeah, we have a default. We said it used to be 10, and we bumped
Yeah.
it higher
Yeah, because
recently
50
as
is
the
not much
default.
at all, because that's one time, right?
Correct. Yeah. So the value for value features we have is you can send Bitcoin to the show while you're listening, as you already explained, with two formats. With one is to stream every minute;
Yeah.
it'll send money on every minute of playing time, and 50 sats is about 1 penny right now,
Mm,
U.S. dollars. And then there's also Boostagram, which is a way to send a donation on demand with a message attached to it. And yeah, we've had it for about 6 months in Podverse. We integrate with a service called Alby,
mm,
and Alby makes it easy to. You can kind of think of it as a payment processor. I shouldn't even say PayPal, but it's similar
Yeah.
to a PayPal
But
like
for
service.
people listen to this podcast, we know that
Right.
we will get, heated replies maybe from Adam and Dave and others. I'm joking now, but you have to explain it somehow. And
Sure,
that's the
yeah.
thing, because
So
on 5-10 years from now, people will say, did you do a boost, or did you send a digital telegram? You're streaming
mhm,
satoshis, right? But
yeah.
now it's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it's still very new to everybody.
Yeah.
So Alby makes it easy to you sign up with an email address. They give you a wallet. There's more advanced features like you could connect your own Bitcoin node to it. But for just beginners, you could sign up with it. They give you a wallet, and then in Podverse, you go to the value for value screen in the mobile app or the website. We have value for value on the website too, and you just log in your Alby account, and then you're connected to Alby and Podverse, and you can begin sending boosts and stream sats that way.
Yeah, and that's neat to how to do it, and also then you have like a cap of. And now I'm going back and forth, and probably I ask you to come again, and we'll could dig in more, because when at first time it's fun to play around, and then you see what impact you could do, and
Hmm.
how you could be a part of, you could say, almost like they call it co-producers or producers in different podcasts,
Sure.
and adding your 2 cents or your how many satoshis you want to send.
Hmm.
And then, but then of course it's this technical thing. I mean, how to set this up, how many characters should you have in the note,
Hmm.
how do you set the streaming sets, how that it's safe, and so on. So it's much things to think about. I mean, you take it for granted in a way, but it must be lots of thought and planning and testing and trial and error and so on. The
Yeah.
And that's why I like the friendly competition. I see how people really get inspired by in a positive way by it each other, but they have their own flavor and own style.
Right. And it's interesting because we have a community of developers in podcasting 2.0 and companies. And it in traditional business sense, we're competitors
Mm,
because we're all trying to make a living doing this. But podcasting, being that it's based on an open standard that everybody follows with RSS, there's benefit to all of us by working together on common problems. If if the RSS host adds support for the lit tag,
mm,
that's good for Podverse because we support live streams with the lit tag. And like I saw just today that Podcast Addict is apparently planning on supporting the live tag. Now, they're technically a competitor, but
yeah,
that's great news that to see more adoption of apps of this live tag because that gives it a better chance of survival.
yeah,
That means that the adoption will continue. That's going to be good for us, uh, and hopefully good for the whole ecosystem.
yeah. And
So yeah,
there
it's
I will take that as a note that I said at end here as a to do lit, and then I wrote routine, like a arrow, and then routine and chat, because I as told you, one of the main advantages I think with podcasting is you could listen whenever you have time.
hmm.
And for example, walking the cat or doing the dishes or chores and whatnot.
Hmm.
But now I see my own behavior now, as I joked that we are competing with Adam Curry and Dave Jones on podcasting 2.0 podcast, because they are now on Podverse. It's saying lit, and you get a notification, and then you
Right.
could be in their live streaming when it's happening. Then they could, of course, add it when we upload it as a finished podcast episode and so on.
Hmm.
But now you could then send a telegram and be almost be in the on air, you could say. So it
Right.
could be like boosting yourself, but also giving your adding your 2 cents, also some inside jokes sometimes.
Hmm.
Then you could I have done that as a, if somebody's saying positive thing or constructive criticism, you could use it as a clip and say, "Look, I said this, or this podcast said this about this issue, or about my podcast or whatnot."
Hmm.
So now with the live thing, and they could read out the boostergram, and you feel that connection somehow. It's like almost like this. I'm not a big YouTube, following live streaming like that,
Hmm.
but I understand the super chats. I see what's going on. People are, I could add my 2 cents to the conversation and be really into the live thing.
Right. Yeah.
And this is getting, but here is directly, it's no middleman taking a cut and so on. And
Right.
it's getting very close to connection. So this, I wonder if the behavior of podcast listeners will change over time when it's starting to getting this fusion.
Hmm.
But it will take lots of effort and things to come up with it. And then, of course, a use case, if somebody will use it or not. So, could you explain a little bit in layman person way what's a namespace and this lit live? I thought it was the live identity tag, but it's live item tag.
Right. So,
And what's it doing in both in the back end, but also
mhm.
for an active user using like Podverse?
Sure. So coming back to RSS feeds, they're what the whole podcast ecosystem is based on. It's simply a file that contains your show information.
Mm,
That's all it is. You can just picture a text file in your head with all the show information, and you put tags around certain information. So for the live item, that's a new tag. It says podcast live item, and then in there basically you include a link to your live stream. So it's that simple from a, high level technical explanation. You just have a link in your RSS feed to your live stream with some other info like what time does it start, what time does it end, what is the title of the live stream. You put that information in your RSS feed, and then it becomes available to every podcast app that connects to RSS feeds. Um, and there's another service on top of that, or that's connected in this process. It's called Podping, and this
mm,
is a service that has been created out of Podcasting 2.0 and the Podcast Index, and it handles sending events to apps to allow us to send notifications as soon as a live stream goes live with podcasting.
yeah,
So other apps that are centralized, like YouTube or Twitch, they handle this in their own way, but they don't give other uh, apps access to this information, not in the same way. So YouTube pushes their notifications. This never existed in a decentralized or distributed way until podcasting 2.0 with this podcast live item tag. Um, so yeah, that's about it. And then from a podcaster's perspective, the process right now is mostly being done by people who aren't afraid of, like, you have some experience with RSS feeds, aren't afraid of getting a little technical with how it works. But where it's going is it's hopefully going to be as simple as you log into your whatever your RSS host is, and it just says, going live, and you type in your live stream title and say when you're going to start, press start live stream, press stop live stream. This service we're talking over right now, Boomcaster,
yeah,
uh, something like Boomcaster, or there's a few alternatives. uh, uh, Ideally, what they do is they handle behind the scenes live streaming to multiple services at once. So, like, as you demonstrated at the beginning, you went live on Facebook, on Twitter, I think, on LinkedIn,
yeah, YouTube, yeah,
YouTube. Uh, some There's no reason why a service like this couldn't potentially go live with the lit tag too,
yeah,
and
okay,
and that would cover not just 4 different apps. It would cover every app that wants to connect to that live stream. So
mm,
it's kind of like a one-stop shop to be able to send it everywhere. Now, I don't expect YouTube to use the live tag,
yeah,
but maybe hundreds of other apps
yeah.
will.
Great. That's great to hear because that's my as a non-techie person, I played around with one app called Backpack Studio, Ed Filowatt, and he has this. You could do live radio, but then you have to hook it up to some Icecast or some other things.
Mhm.
and I didn't know if I did it right or whatnot. And so
Mhm.
so for that will, if but then again it's the hosting that they will see, and where I see the friendly competition again. Like Blueberry now announced that they have a long list of podcasting 2.0 features
Yeah,
that
I'm
they
very
will.
excited about that.
So so this is interesting to see, because again it will be that you're getting more and more connected to the service and value that, and
Mhm.
you maybe use it more often, and so on. Because that's what Harry was saying. Maybe you don't do live every day or whatnot. You have to find how I'm adding value. Maybe they don't want to, to joke, watch us two dudes here,
Mhm.
but if we will show things, different things, or maybe behind the face, behind, you know, behind the scenes and other things like that,
Mhm.
or like bloopers, or pre-show, or like I don't know what, or you have a round table. You could do lots of things with it. But again, it is this technical barrier, and this stumbling block, so to
Mhm.
speak. But it's also fascinating. You could say a bit more about comment coming from the thing about before regular, World Wide Web, when we had interrelay chat. So you have that a chat that's pretty addictive, I must say. I jumped on before we start recording, say, to joke a little bit. When I saw the notification, podcasting
Mhm.
2.0 live, I will talking with Mitch soon. So see you later. So there, could you explain about what's that? So you have a chat feature function in the app, so you could talk with others
Yes.
that listen to a live streaming show. How does that work?
So this is another feature that any app can implement. So we're one. I believe CurioCaster is another one. There's probably other examples at this point, but uh, basically IRC channel, as you mentioned, it's one of the longest running chat services that people have used for decades at this
Mm,
point. We Podcasting 2.0 has an IRC chat room, and they give us a link in their RSS feed, and then we just load that chat room in the app. So while you're listening to Podcasting 2.0 live in the player, you can just swipe over to see the chat room and start typing within the app. So that combined with boostagrams, the ability to send messages with donations, it allows a really interactive experience that is, I think, a really exciting development in podcasting. This never existed before. As you mentioned, podcasting, one of the main benefits you think of is that you can listen at your convenience. You don't have to, tune in at a certain time. And that's true, and that will continue to be true for podcasting. But now you have this extra level where if you are interested in a live experience, you can get it within the same show. You Like in the case of Podcasting 2.0, I get a notification when a new episode is live, or I'm sorry, a new episode that was recorded is now
mm,
available. And I
mm,
also get a notification when it's live in
mm,
progress. So if I'm available at that time, I'll tune in.
mm.
If, they say something on the show I want to comment on, I'll send a boostagram during the show and, throw 10,000 sats or something and kind of bribe them to read my
Yeah,
comment on the show.
yeah, and of course they do it voluntarily. It's up to them, but they like it because it's adding content, and that's also the thing, that you could make a clip of something, maybe why you should listen to that episode.
Mhm.
You could give a teaser. You could and you could do fun things, like something funny somebody's saying, and I like that clip, the feature that you're doing. I've done it mainly on, I think on the web, in a browser, but
Mhm.
it was very easy to pick a time, and then do a clip how long it should be, and then you could save it, and then you could distribute that, like tweeted it, and then probably that you have to come back and talk a bit more about that, the whole thing, because this could be gamification. It could be, how many clips of an episode, popular clips, and so on.
Mhm.
But what I was learning, I was listening to podcast and did screenshots when I mentioned my boostergrams and other things like that. I thought it was funny and interesting, and
Mhm.
then going back and making clip. But you did a comment there on podcastindex.social, the Mastodon thing, that you could use if somebody's like business intelligence, like what are they saying about Adam Curry, right? Then you could search for his name in
Mm.
the
Yeah.
transcript and find directly what's saying, and then you can make a clip of that.
Right. So you're referring to the transcript feature, which is another podcasting 2.0 feature. And it's kind of amazing to me that the industry hasn't already had a defined standard for transcripts, because they're so important for accessibility. Obviously, if you don't have transcripts, then a significant part of your audience will not be able to hear your
Yeah,
shows.
and I'm
And
open for, not for interrupting, but I'm open for the free market to decide. But it is even demands from certain groups and that they will enforce it
right,
in the future. If you don't have this accessibility thing, then
right.
you could be in deep trouble. I want
Yeah, yeah.
the voluntarily exchange and private companies decide what to
Hmm.
do and serve a customer. But it's also, as I had one listener saying, "Do you have transcript?" And I said, "Yeah, I could get transcript, but it's also who's paying, and could I,
Sure.
if I, you could do it like manually." And like they pay if you have a show. Now we are talking, and it was great conversations. We definitely have to come back, Mitch. But if you take $2 per minute manually, then it's like $120, right? And how
Sure.
will you
Yeah.
cover that as a podcaster?
Yeah, and I don't know what the cost is. So you're speaking about like, well, if somebody manually does it,
Yeah, but
if
I
somebody
take that
actually
an
listens and
example. But
types it
now
out.
with like Chat PD, what is called, and as I said, I heard from Pod News that Slack has started with it somehow
Hmm.
for some reason. So if you put a podcast episode in Slack, it will automatically generate it.
Oh,
And I
interesting.
and I have it in all two, the service that I also pay for editing and post production and so
Hmm.
on. It's a good service, but I mean, simple in a way. So that's included also for a
Hmm.
certain amount of hours and so on. So it's getting better
Right.
and better and cheaper. But again, it's this competition that have to come to play.
Yeah.
So so
And
that's what I'm saying. I like to have but when I have, now I'm babbling here, you want also like Todd Cochran saying, having your own domain and your own hub. If you're
mhm,
giving out everything like transcript, why should they listen to the podcast? But mainly it could be that it's add on, and you want to see. Now here on the live streaming, we could do a caption at the same time. I'm not doing it
mhm.
this time, but then people even don't have to listen to our voices. They could read it. It's funny, but many people are, before they start watching a video and so on, they see the caption.
Mhm.
So it could be used for many reasons. So please
Yeah.
give your reasons and also what you're thinking in order to get this going.
Well, one of the main is obvious for accessibility, so people,
Yeah,
people with deaf people can
like hearing aids.
still
Yeah, yeah.
hear the podcast. But it also is just a advantage, as you touched on, that you can search through the transcript to find what moments something was said.
Mm,
So let's say, you're super into Bitcoin and you want to
yeah.
find out when was Bitcoin talked about in this podcast. You just
Mm,
go to the transcript. We have this implemented in Podverse. You just open the transcript and type in the word Bitcoin, and it'll show you every timestamp where it was mentioned.
mm,
Um, it's really handy when you need it. Like if you're listening to a 2 hour plus podcast and there was a moment, but you were out, at the
yep.
grocery store, you didn't have time to make a clip or make a note of it. You just search for the keywords and you find it right away. It's super handy. Uh, I don't know how affordable it is for podcasters. I believe Buzzsprout is one that, like, by default they generate
Yeah,
AI
yeah. They have,
transcripts.
yeah.
If it comes in standard from RSS hosts, that's awesome.
Mm,
Then the podcaster doesn't have to really think about it. Just you upload your MP3, and it's included in your monthly, whatever you pay per
Yep.
month to the service. Um, yeah, and so where is it going? It it's hard to say what I of all the podcasting 2.0 namespaces, because of the reasons you mentioned about how there are countries where there are regulations that would seem to say if you're a giant corporation, you should make your content accessible. It seems like one that could be adopted potentially by a major app. I'm
Mm.
not going to hold my breath on that, but I would think a company like Apple, all with their distributing podcast content all across the world, you know, I would think they would be interested in transcripts for
Yeah, I
accessibility
think
reasons
sooner or
and
later, because
compliance
that,
reasons.
like James Cridland and Sam Sethi, they discussed that on Pod News review, that when you search for, or it was maybe, yeah, it was New Media Show with Todd and Rob. They talked about,
Hmm.
James Cridland had written like a report on that, how uh, the potential of a search in Apple, because
Hmm.
they don't have, they search the title and they search some other things, but not many other tags and so on. So it's hard
Hmm.
to find. And the Google, who is good at search, you
Hmm.
find it on the web. But that's
Right.
for
Yeah.
very so-called reasons, because you will then be
Hmm.
you will enter their how should I, they have played with the RSS, so they, you get into their system, so to speak.
Sure. I hadn't
So
really
that's
even
what I
thought
like
about
with
that.
your app, for example, that it's easy to use it, and then you could swipe and say,
Hmm.
now I want to see the transcript, now I want to see the show notes, and so on.
Hmm.
So please continue.
Oh, well, I hadn't even quite thought of it that Apple or Google, with the power of like advanced search engines, can use the transcripts to help you search in advanced ways for any podcast.
Hmm.
That gives you all the speech in a text format that then becomes something they can index and you can search on. So there's
W-
another.
We'll see. One service called what is called Ivy.fm, I think.
Yeah, I met, oh boy, I want to say his name's Mike, but I can't remember,
Yeah,
not 100%, but I met him at podcast movement in Dallas.
yeah. So so that could be something, searchability and so on. So, and that's again the coming, wrapping up in a way. But when you, as a listener, but also fellow podcaster, starting listen when other podcasting commenting on things, development, and then you have heard it some other place or found something, then you
Hmm.
could give a like a feedback loop or a comment, and that's adding to the
Hmm.
conversation again. So I will send a tweet and maybe do a clip on this new media show about Ivy, and then put them into the loop and see what's going on. And that's thanks that I'm listening to into with them also. But then it's
Cool.
good to get reminded about, because it's very easy, and I bet I understand that's the challenge. If you're used to, like, big players, for example, listen to music, and if that's app also could have podcasts, then it's very easy to use that kind of app, right? So
Yeah.
that's why you should go to newpodcastapps.com, or search for that hashtag on Twitter. I'm trying to doing a thing about that when it's
Yeah, I see you
relevant.
very active, and you're one
Yeah.
of our biggest promoters for podcasting 2.0.
So maybe you should start with. I know that you are. Do you want to talk a bit more about Podverse? You are a small, unit or team here. So when is the
Uh,
merchandise coming? The nice blue headphone.
I don't know. Well, we operate on a open source budget here.
Yeah.
We have no investors. It's all of our expenses come out of pocket. We do have a premium feature, so
Yeah.
uh, we all of the software is freely available.
Mm,
Anybody can download all the software we have and deploy it and do anything they want with it. But we do charge for a premium membership, which gives you access to our server side features like syncing across all of your devices.
mm,
Like when you In order to use syncing, that requires us to have a server running that you can post information to, and there's costs associated with having a server running. Uh, that said, we also operate on the value for value model. So if $18 US dollars per
Mm.
year is too much, we'll give you a free membership. You just have to email us and tell us what email address you want a free membership with. Uh, that's kind of we're doing like a middle ground here. We don't make it like so you just sign up. Well, we do give a 3-month free trial,
Yeah, and that's
but
what I tested, and then I got reminded that now it's starting expiring. And then I was
yes,
should I do that? And of course, I wanted to support it. And then now when you're here, you could then explain what's the added value and the features and so on. And now we have done that in a way. So maybe you want to explain a little bit more about that, what's maybe coming in the future.
sure. In the near term, Um, well, we're focused on live stream in particular because there's some exciting growth happening here with new players, new apps, new RSS hosts, and new podcasters jumping on board. So we want to make sure that we provide like the best possible live stream experience. Uh, that said, we do far more than live streams. We have traditional podcast listening too, and we hope that we're as good as any app you can get for that purpose. But so live streams in particular, another feature I hope to get done before the spring is Android Auto.
Mm.
We added Apple CarPlay about a month ago,
Yeah.
and that was one of our most requested features. Uh, we have like 5 times more Apple users than Android for some reason.
Mm.
Not entirely sure why, uh, uh, but so Android Auto is next on the list. That's one of the other major features we want to add. Besides that, to be honest, I'm kind of in a like a regrouping phase. We got so much stuff done in 2022. We had over 50 releases for
Wow.
mobile. So like a release per week on mobile that includes, either bug fixes or new features. And we're pretty happy with like the new stability, and there's better performance. It just seems like a more complete app than it did, much more complete than it was in the beginning of 2022. And at this point, I'm actually like scratching my head, like thinking like, where do we go next? What's our big move next? Android Auto is a big one because podcast listening happens so frequently in cars
Mm.
that we definitely want that in. Um, there's other stuff like we have F-Droid, which is a free and open source app store. So
Hmm.
Google is in charge of Google Play.
Yeah.
Then there's an alternative store that's available on Android called F-Droid, and they require all of your software to be open source, and they don't allow you to use things like Google services. They don't allow you to use the big tech stuff.
Okay.
So we don't have notifications supported on F-Droid yet because on iOS and Google Play, we use something called Google Firebase to send those notifications. So all that to say, like we actually get a lot of engagement from F-Droid users because people in that community really care about this stuff, and there aren't that many options available for them. But they don't get notifications currently, so that's another feature I'd like to add. Um, I don't know how soon that will be though.
Yeah.
Um, oh, and then another one that I talked about on Podcasting 2.0 is cross app comments,
Mm.
which is we want to provide the ability for podcasters to have one comment thread that is available in every app. So you're from any app, you're able to send a reply to that podcast in a thread. And we have the ability to do it. We can do it with ActivityPub or Mastodon, as it's more commonly known. And it's achievable. And the surge of attention that Mastodon has gotten in just the past few months, going
Mm.
from this obscure thing for computer nerds to all of a sudden,
Mm. We have to
Elon
thank
Musk is,
Elon for that. Yeah.
yeah, all of a sudden it's like relevant, whether people like it or hate it, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, that is another that by the summer, I'm hoping that we have an implementation. Uh, Given we can decide, if it turns out to be easy, maybe it takes a weekend or two. Like we work fast,
Mm.
but this is territory that isn't implemented in any other podcast app yet.
Yeah, and for me as like a long time blogger since 2002, I thought in order to be called a blog, it should have, the timeline with the latest post up,
Hmm.
and then you have a unique permalink that's created automatically, and then possibility with comments, I think. But nowadays it's not so common anymore because for spam or for that people are on other places and so on. So I would be very happy that see that again, that you could really add your 2 cents and then maybe somehow pay micro donation or sats in order to do that, so you will get rid of spammers or the trolls and whatnot.
Hmm.
So, but it is lots of things to grab and to get around in order to that will work on everything. But
Right.
I mean, that would be very interesting to see because, and if that's searchable, or you could go back and see, oh, what was that comment thread? And then you could go to Mastodon of Fediverse or podcastindex.social or whatnot.
Hmm.
And even maybe search. I saw the latest was that Medium was going into the Mastodon also. But then they are more short form and then, relating to their platform. So it's very interesting how this um, could play out. So I think that's, and we will do a, thanks again for your time, Mitch, and we'll do a wrap up here, and also this ask thing and value for value, and I will ask the guest to do that. But as an end, I mean, now I understand your why, but do you want to end a little one? Why are you doing this, Mitch?
Sure. Well, I'm passionate about independent media and
Yeah.
open source software, and it doesn't seem like if we don't do it, I don't know who will.
Mm,
There are a lot of passionate people who work on independent projects to keep big tech from controlling everything.
mm,
Uh, it's bugged me for the past 20 years how we'll see a great technological innovation, and then within a few years it just seems to get consumed by one or two companies,
mm,
and they get just this disproportionate control. And that doesn't have to happen with podcasting. It's kind of open in its nature. So uh, that's a big reason why I'm so passionate about this, is I want to do my part to make sure that it stays this open and accessible uh, media format, that it's affordable, and that it can do all of the cool things that you can get from a centralized uh, big tech sort of platform.
mm.
That's what motivates me.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And also, you have done lots of good, unique selling points or position or preparation or how you call it. But do you have? I want when you start, it's a bit of a rabbit hole in a way. When you start playing around with new apps, and it's fun to test different ones for different reasons and different use cases.
Hmm.
And it's you're developing over time. But what would you say is like, why should the listeners out there listen and use Podverse?
Well, it's hopefully the best podcast app listening experience you can have. I think the main selling point for a casual listener is the ability to sync across all of your devices,
Yeah.
that you can listen on your phone, you can drive to the office, you get into your workstation, and you can pick up where you left off on the website, and you can go back and forth in that way. You can share clips easily. You can get notifications for when new episodes are available. And also, if you get further down the rabbit hole, start sending boostograms
Yeah.
to and start interacting and supporting the content creator directly. If you get on board with the value for value feature and you give it a try, like now that I'm used to using it, it's a lot of fun. It's I can send messages with money attached to the creators I want to support. I hear them reply to me because they most for the most part they'll respond to you when you send a message. And also I stream money. I send about 2 cents current rates per minute right now.
Hmm.
Uh, and it's actually a good feeling to see, like, I'm listening to the show, but I'm also it's like an active thing that is happening. I can see every minute it sends another 2 cents to the creator, and there aren't that many platforms that'll allow you to do that. So I uh yeah, we have a lot of exciting features. So Podverse, you do everything that you would hope it would do, and a lot more than that too, because we're adopting all these cutting edge features.
Yeah, and that you definitely have to come back and we talk more about that mindset. Like James Cridland said, maybe it doesn't sound much, but if even if you have not maybe a very big audience, and this is a small podcast, but people are taking this active choice, it adding up, both as a
Hmm.
boost, really a positive boost, that somebody is listening and comment. And I'm all for lurking, and people could say it in private and so on, but doing that, but also streaming and saying like if you have like Apple, service music or whatever, or another service that you pay like every month. If you say, oh, I have this budget for podcasters and stream certain amount, and you could
Hmm.
change it up and down and whatnot. But it is this mindset and starting doing that. But that that could, I mean, it needs some education, entertainment, engagement, and
Sure.
getting there. But I really see that because, and it's also, as I said, real money. It's bits of a Bitcoin,
Sure.
so it's adding up. I mean, it's really fascinating about that. So that we definitely have to come back and see and talk more about that. Maybe digging into the mental thing about it, and the mindset, and what we could do. So again, call to action is, download and test the new podcast app like Podverse.fm. So I think definitely do that and spread the good word. Make a clip, make a fun clip of what we are talking about, and send a boostergram, streaming sats, get a notification when I'm getting live in different. And thanks again for bouncing it back and forth, and maybe with Harry in the future could implement something or some other things. So that's good. So with that said, if you have any ending notes, or you could make the ask for me, Mitch, if you want.
No, I would just say, yep, as you already mentioned, podverse.fm. If
Yeah,
you're interested, that's the website, available on iOS, Android, and F-Droid. And yeah, please give us a try. And we're very responsive. If you want to reach us on Twitter or Mastodon or by email, it's contact@podverse.fm. We're happy to reply. We try to answer within one or two business days.
great. So again, thanks for your time, Mitch, and thanks for you out there. I'm waving live to YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and also people downloading and listening or streaming. So again, go to newpodcastapp.com and download a new podcast app like Podverse. So thanks again, Mitch.
Thanks, Martin.